Up next.
Give me back my slippers. I'm the only one that knows how to use them. They're no use to you. Give them back to me. Give them back.
Keep tight inside of them. Their magic must be very powerful, or she wouldn't want them so badly.
You stay out of this, Glinda, or I'll fix you as well.
Oh, rubbish. You have no power here. Be gone before somebody drops a house on you, too.
Very well. I'll bide my time. And as for you, my fine lady, it's true, I can't attend you here and now as I'd like. But just try to stay out of my way. Just try. I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog, too.
It's all right. You can get up. She's gone.
What are you doing?
Preparing to prove something. Preparing to prove, my dear Norman, that you really do believe in magic. These, as you can see, are tarot cards. You know their significance, of course. They represent your hope. And this, of course, will represent Pansy. There. Now.
You stupid woman. Do you honestly think that I believe any of that rubbish?
Yes, it does seem like nonsense, doesn't it? Just a silly woman setting fire to some cards.
No. Listen, my brother. It's I who renounce you. And in the name of Satan, I place a curse upon you. Go ahead. Killing me doesn't mean it's over, because you will never escape my curses nor those of Satan. The unchained elements of the Prince of Darkness are lying in ambush. Beware and hear me, O Prince of Vida. My revenge will strike down you and your accursed house. And in the blood you give your son, and his son will I continue to live immortal. They will restore to me the life that you will take from me. And I shall return to torment and destroy throughout the nights of time. What have you done to it? What have you done to its eyes?
He has his father's eyes.
What are you talking about, guys? Eyes are normal. What have you done to him, you maniac?
Satan is his father, not Guy. He came up from hell and begat a son of mortal woman. Hail, Satan!
Hail, Satan!
Satan is his father, and his name is Adrian. He shall overthrow the mighty and lay waste their temples. He shall redeem the despised and wreak vengeance in the name of the burned and the tortured. Hail, Adrian! Hail, Adrian! Hail, Satan! Hail, Satan!
I'm still waiting for my hex. What happened? Did the eye of the newt go sour? Or are you going to overtake me with your great good looks?
Very well, little worm. Feel my power now. Feel the hand of my magic at your throat. Feel it squeeze.
You got me.
witches are wicked. How many times have you been told? Your great-grandma Alexis crushed a kingdom with her hexes, and that's the proud tradition I brought you to uphold. Try to be as evil as your cousins. Lucretia was the cruelest in the crowd. She cooked up evil potions by the dozens. Be just like her and make your mama proud. We're witches, wizards, and warlocks. We're the reason honest people purchase door locks. We turn princes into frogs, peasants into pheasants, soldiers and sailors into swine. We've never been accused of being angels, but as for being devils, we're divine. All our clan was evil and malicious. And that is how I want my girls to be. Work hard at being vicious. And if you're real ambitious, you might wind up an evil witch like me. A terrible, detestable, contemptible, despicable, evil, mean old witch. Like me.
Hollywood deals in dreams, myths, and legends, but not in the dreams, myths, and legends that other people create, but in their own myths and legends. They are not unlike scandal magazines and supermarket newspapers that you see. There is a real life, and there's a kind of a media mythical life, and they coexist more or less simultaneously. There is a real Elizabeth Taylor. There are all kinds of real people. But there are also media creations who exist primarily in these supermarket publications. And they are dependent on the real people, and yet, in many ways, not very closely related to them. And this is the way Hollywood has always been about both current fact and history. I would say that film exists almost entirely to, well, on the one hand, you can say it exists to express creativity. On the other hand, you can say it exists to misrepresent. Speaking very generally, I think I would have to say, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, but the situation is vaguely hopeless. In the matter of witches in particular, you have another obstacle. I mean, I realize that I'm speaking to an audience of good witches or white witches or positive witches or witches who have an image that they consider totally at variance with the traditional myths. But unfortunately, feeding the traditional mythical image, you have the dictionary itself, which has a definition that you abhor. So you've got, as witches, you have a very steep uphill climb.
Now, you call yourself a witch. I looked up the word witch in the dictionary today, and it said a witch is somebody who practices magic, usually of the injurious kind, and that it's often associated with worship of devils or other supernatural spirits. Does that describe you?
No, actually, wherever you looked it up was obviously written by a Christian, and it's informed exactly what the Christians, not all Christians, but most Christians think.
It was a standard English dictionary.
Yeah, well, I can bet you anything it was a Protestant who combined it and wasn't a pagan.
A witch is someone who practices the old religion of the goddess, which is the pre-Christian European tradition. It's very similar to Native American traditions. It says that the earth is sacred, that the entire universe is a living being that all of us are part of, and that it's this world, us, you know, the human, animal, plant communities and the interrelationships between them that are what is sacred, that are what we value.
I will use the word Wicca. I don't personally use the word witch because it has so many negative connotations for most people. I will use it among other Wiccans because they know what I mean. But I find that it gets in the way. My way of relating to people is to establish a common ground. And the word witch gets in the way of that for me. If somebody asks me, are you a witch? First, I want to find out what they mean by witch, and then I can answer the question.
Witchcraft, in the first place, is one of many pagan religions. Or Wicca, I should say, is one of many pagan religions. The term witchcraft has a lot of definitions, many of which do not recognize a religious nature whatsoever. So let's talk about Wicca as the religion.
I suppose I've been able to survive it because I have a basically bad attitude. I don't know. I've always felt like that is the word. So why not use it and reclaim it? And even though it's hard to do, it takes a lot of time. You have to explain it endlessly, and you have to deal with people sort of saying dumb things to you endlessly. I think it saves time in the long run. You know, I feel like it's true. A lot of people still don't understand it, are scared by it, think you're totally flaky if you use it. But I guess recently, I suppose with my new book coming out, as I get a certain kind of attention for it, I'm kind of going, well, see, you know, people are actually listening, and it is good that I have insisted on using this word all these years, because if I had kept it in the closet and hidden it all of these years, I would have to start all this education now, you know, to get to this point. And now at least some people are beginning to get the idea or get through it. I think that there are people out there, of course, who kind of fly off the handle at the word and think it means Satanists and are, you know, yeah, and hopefully are not going to get to be elected to be our next president. But the thing is that those people actually, even if we didn't use the word, they do the same thing about anything that is New Age or that is anything different from what they do. And so if we weren't calling ourselves witches, they'd be calling us witches anyhow. So we might as well call ourselves what we are. And I think it's always important when you're making a decision about your spiritual identity, is never to make it out of fear. On the other hand, you know, if you're not called to be a witch or call yourself a witch, that's also perfectly fine. You will probably be called to do something else equally difficult in your life.
And do you think that maybe you're using the wrong word when you call yourself a witch?
Well, we believe that, in fact, if we were to deny the name witch, we would be cutting ourselves off from our spiritual forebears, who were the practitioners of the nature religions of old. We believe that a lot of the people who were persecuted and killed as witches in the Middle Ages were, in fact, practicing something very similar to what we're practicing now. Of course, it's a living religion, so it's changed a lot over the centuries, just as Christianity has. But it might be safer if we were to say we're not witches, but I think it would be cutting ourselves off from part of the truth. And the truth is that over the centuries, there have always been pagans, there have always been people who worship nature, and some of those people were burned in the Inquisition.
The word witch comes from Wicca, W-I-C-C-A, and it comes from wicker, and wicker means to bend. And so it's the craft of the wise to bend. And bend what? Wisdom. Bending reality, bending your way so you don't break, you know. It's just another way of looking at nature. Wisdom is when the big wind blows, you bend.
Pagan doesn't mean non-Christian. A lot of people think that's what it means. It means peasant, basically, country person. And the religion of the people, the old religion. When Christianity began to make its way into Europe, the people in Europe had an indigenous religion which was close to the earth, and people in every place had different traditions, and they had different names for the goddesses and gods, and their own sets of stories that they told about who their people were, and they were also very open to new ideas and new traditions. There was a lot of migration going on all through Europe, and when the new peoples would come in, the people who were already there would look at their traditions and take on what seemed relevant. And both the religions and the languages were in a constant state of change all the time, and yet keeping a central theme.
For a long time in Europe, Christianity coexisted with the older religions, much in the way it does in Latin America.
I went to Nicaragua in December of 1984 with Witness for Peace. What I found was that the Catholicism they practiced there was probably very much like Europe was in the 1500s or the 1600s, where you have witches and curanderas and all of these rites that are nominally Catholic but are actually very pagan, going on all the time side by side. So we happened to be there on the winter solstice, and I was in Corinto, which is the port town, the one that the U.S. mined the harbor of. And I had thought I would be the only person in all of Nicaragua that wanted to celebrate the winter solstice. I was sure I was going to have to give up my ritual plunge for the year, because there I was, go running off and take your clothes off in a Catholic country, where people are at war and all this stuff is going on. But there we were on the beach. There was no one around. We didn't find out later that the reason there was no one around was because they weren't supposed to be on the beach at night, and they patrolled it and whatever. But we jumped in the ocean and had our plunge and did our ritual. We came out, and the whole town was up all night long celebrating a fiesta for their local virgin. They call the Virgin of Acta, who is their miraculous virgin, and she comes and she visits them 10 days out of the year. And they were spent the whole night up with a vigil for her on the solstice. And, at midnight, this man came out with this big wooden framework around him, and I asked some woman what it was. It looked like a horse. She laughed. She said, no, it's a bull. And this is like, the sacred bull and the virgin go way, way back, like to prehistoric times as symbols of the earth religion. And I'm going, here it is. It's the winter solstice. It's midnight. Here is the sacred bull of light chasing away the darkness through the streets of Corinto.
The names would change, and some of the stories, but who the goddess was and who the god was, or the various gods and goddesses, didn't change a whole lot. When Christianity came into that environment, in a lot of places in Europe, the people who were already there simply looked at the new tradition and said, well, this makes sense. This is a story about a god who was born on earth of a virgin mother. This sounds a lot like our sun god who's born at winter solstice, and his resurrection happens in the spring when we know in our stories that happens, and this is wonderful. We're going to celebrate these names. And so they did. Most people in the early Middle Ages would have said that they were Christian. They would have also been celebrating the solstices and equinoxes and the cross-quarter days in much the same way that they had for centuries and centuries from ancient times. They would be still doing the great rite in the fields, and sometimes the Christian priests would celebrate that too, right along with all the other people. There wasn't a lot of conflict between the old religion and the new in early times.
That was the same in Europe. They had saints and they had things that went on under a Christian guise that were really quite pagan, and probably a lot of the old priests were able to make that transition and continue to do what they had always done.
The people in Europe were basically farming people. They worked the land, and they lived very close to the land. And so they celebrated the seasonal festivals that have to do with the solar year and the lunar festivals, because those were what they needed to pay attention to when they were working the land, doing the planting and the harvest. And so much depended, their whole existence depended on the fertility of the land, and weaving their lives and the things that they did in their work in with the cycles of nature and the Mother Earth. When they began to build churches in Europe, they built them on the ancient sites, most of which were sacred to the goddess. They built them in the sacred groves or on the sites that people had been coming to for centuries. The sacred wells in Ireland, very strong tradition around the wells, and they became sacred to the Virgin. And the churches, when they were built, not only were they situated on the sites that goddess worship celebrated, but also they incorporated into their design the ancient symbols that people had used in pagan traditions. The peasant people did not read, books were not available, and so what they knew about Christianity was basically what the priests were willing to share and to tell. With saints, you have all kinds of levels of meaning. You have real people who lived and did real things, and you have real in quotes as meaning historical events that happened. And then you have old stories, and the two become overlapping and united in people's minds, so that it's real hard these days to look back on, especially the older saints, and figure out what was tradition that was handed down from generations before that person ever lived, and what the person really did, or if there even was such a person. In those times, you have stories like the story of Joan of Arc. Joan was very much in the tradition of the people. She was a peasant. She her mother was a village healer woman, and she was trained in that craft, in the herb lore, when she was a young girl, and grew up celebrating the festivals that they celebrated in their town. I think they had a certain tree that they would celebrate equinox with, and she participated with all the other young girls in those rites. And she was also at the same time going to the cathedral and celebrating Mass there, and learning what she knew about the Christian tradition. Was learned from the ceremonies of the church and from the pictures that were depicted in the stained glass windows. She has a lot of qualities that were very much part of the old tradition. She trusted her own experience very strongly and believed very strongly in what she saw with her own spirit. And when she began to hear voices which were very spiritual for her, she gave them names of Christian saints. She identified Saint Anne and Saint Catherine and Saint Michael as being the people that she was talking to. Joan's life is interesting because she was burned ostensibly as a witch. Basically, the charge was that she wore male clothing, so there was definitely a persecution of cross-dressing going on. She was also very definitely a lesbian. That's clear from the trial transcripts. And that whole story about the burning of Joan, you can see the hierarchy very much concerned with its power. You can also see how the secular authorities, the government, used the church hierarchy to achieve its ends. And that was definitely going on. There was a lot of payoffs happening, the church authorities being paid off by the government and vice versa, in order to gain power.
Well, I don't think they were willing to give it up. I think they were persecuted and forced to give it up. Mm-hmm. That was the witch persecutions, which took place primarily in the 16th and 17th centuries. And it was mostly the peasants that held to the old religion longest. went to the traditional healers, couldn't afford the expensive doctors. And during that period, first the Catholic and then the Protestant Church started a really concerted campaign to wipe out what was left of the old religion, and they did that through torture and through propaganda, through outlawing it, and through just horrendous murders of anyone who continued to practice it. So what was left of it had to become very, very secret and go underground.
That the forces of evil were very real to people, and that they were going through the plague at the same time as the burning times. And there was a lot of fear running rampant, and people being really afraid of death and really afraid of a lot of the things they saw happening, and not knowing where to locate that fear. There are also persecution of Jews at the same time, even things like wiping out the cat population because somebody thought the cats were evil or something.
I think the bad press comes directly from the times of persecution. All the myths about witches, all of the stereotypes, basically were lies that were perpetuated. Some of them have kernels in truth. I mean, things like witches having cats. The cat was a sacred animal to the goddess. Think about flying on brooms. The broom was the wand, and it was used in fertility rituals, and it was used as a way of sweeping away negative energies.
For instance, if the mayor of the town was having trouble with, one of the women in the town, or some of the women, all they'd have to do is just suggest that they were a witch. This is true also of the witch trials up into modern times in this country. The same thing was going on.
People have been persecuted. People have been murdered, 9 million or more, perhaps. People have been murdered over the thousands of years of persecution since the Old Testament admonition, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. I believe that this particular persecution dates from a time when there was an active pogrom against all psychic people, not just the women who were perhaps the midwives and practitioners of European shamanism or witchcraft, but anyone who had psychic talent or an ability for precognition. These are skills that were very threatening to the dominator model.
When Christianity became a state religion, and therefore a conqueror's religion, and the patriarchy began to take ascendance, Christianity initially was not a patriarchal religion at all. It was very much egalitarian. But when the hierarchy began to gain power, they were a little upset by the fact that the people were going to the village healer women, to the priestesses, for their needs. They were not coming to the priests. And at some point that became real threatening. And the hierarchy decided to consolidate their power by wiping out the old religion and its priestesses. And that was when you began to have the burning times, where the hierarchy would invent charges and persecute in real horrible ways the people for practicing their religion in the same way they always had. And suddenly all of those things were seen as signs of evil, and the women were, especially the women, priestesses, were burned by the millions. There's all different estimates of how many were burned, but they were women and children, and men too, especially gay men, were burned to start the fires. That's where the word faggot comes from. And it was very much a patriarchal persecution of women, as well as the Christian hierarchy persecuting paganism.
Witches were seen anybody who owned land, could read and write, was single, without a man, or somebody said, "You're too beautiful, you bewitched me." So then, because of your beauty and your bewitchment, you said no to me. I accuse you of witchcraft. Beautiful women were burned as well. Doesn't matter if you're ugly, old, or beautiful. If you have those standards to hate us and condemn us, then you will fight just against 9 million. According to the Vatican, 9 million people were burned, tortured with sexual tortures, which is very interesting because that's the underbelly of Christianity. The big denial of the body, the big denial of the earth, the denial of your creature self creates these fantasies that then gets projected on the others, and then the others get hurt. So just to tell you one story, and I know this is not a pretty story, but I want to tell you anyway because I know in your heart you think that we are evil, and I want you to know I'm more afraid of you than you could ever be afraid of me. That I'm able to speak here is a miracle. I had 4 members of my family tortured in the 16th century. I had an aunt who was pregnant. She was accused of witchcraft because a bale of hay fell down in front of her house, and the man who owned the hay was just angry about it and said, "You're a witch, you made it fall down." She was arrested. Once you were arrested, there was no way coming home. The only thing our families could do is to bargain with the executioner so that the death comes swiftly and not through long tortures. The executioners would take out the last chair from your family's house in order to get payment for this mercy of quick killing. Pregnant as she was, they kept her in jail, and when it came time to give birth, they tied her legs together while the priests had drumsticks for lunch, and they watched her die in child labor. This was one of my ancestors.
Inasmuch as it was popularly believed that the continuation of many years
Beautiful women, power in their struggle. Beautiful women, there's a power in their love. Beautiful women, power in their struggle. Beautiful women, there's a power in their love.
Hello, I'm Morning Glory Zell, and I'm here to tell you some things about goddesses. And I'm a women's historian, and I am a witch from the eclectic shamanic tradition. I'm also a priestess ordained in the Church of All Worlds, and I've been involved in women's religion and goddess history and the craft since 1967. So I guess that sort of makes me an elder of sorts. I think that it's very important to learn about the history of ancient religions and the history of feminine divinity, because it's one of those things that we've lost. It's a piece of our lost heritage. It's a way of correcting for 5,000 years of negative press, so to speak. It's time for witches and goddess worshippers to come out of their broom closets and to come and share their knowledge and to share their expertise. And I have been collecting for the past 22 years images of her, images of the great goddess in all of her different forms. This collection represents historical goddess worship from the most ancient times, from the Venus of Willendorf, 28,000 BCE, to modern contemporary goddesses such as Kuan Yin, worshipped in China, Japan, and in America as well, in the Buddhist tradition. She's, though technically not a goddess, she's a bodhisattva, but the people revere her as a goddess. And so from the ancient to the modern, this collection spans all of our history. As long as we've been human and as long as we have been spiritual, we have had goddesses. For 20,000 years before God the Father ever materialized, God was a mother, was a woman. And the great Mother Goddess, by her many, many names, was the first primal deity of the human species. From the Paleolithic caves of Willendorf, Austria, of La Spouge in France, to Dolní Věstonice in Czechoslovakia. These matrikas, or Venuses as they're called in archaeology, are an image of Mother Nature, our oldest images of Mother Nature. And Mother Nature is a concept that is still with us today. This particular goddess of La Salle shows the Great Mother in her pregnant, fertile, fecund form, holding the moon in the form of a bison horn in her right hand. And in this, we know that it is a moon because there are 13 crescent marks carved along, corresponding to the 13 full moons of the year. So what this could be is perhaps the oldest lunar calendar that ties the cycle of the moon to the phases of the fertility of the woman as she's holding her belly and gesturing with her left hand to her belly and holding the moon in her right hand. This is the mother of the animals, the mother of all life. Here is a mother that we all share, whether we're men, women, animals, plants, humans, or otherwise. We all have the same mother. And it is under her cloak and the faith of the goddess religion that the whole of the human race for 20,000 years gained its humanity and its sensitivity and its caring. Many people seem to feel, or have said in the past, that because men did not know in the Paleolithic that women were not the only source of life and that the males also had a role in procreation, that the divinity of womanhood was manifest because women gave birth mysteriously and miraculously, and that when men learned their role in the procreation, that was the beginning of the end of that. And actually, that's not true, because throughout the Neolithic, people knew about animal husbandry, they knew about farming, they knew agriculture, they learned the facts of life and the facts of nature from observable phenomenon. And the Great Mother still continued to give birth, and the animals gave birth, and she had a consort. And this particular image was also found in Catalhuyuk.
This is the story of the birth chamber. You are there, Çatalhöyük, 6500 BC. Try to imagine you're watching this on your TV set. You enter the shrine from above through the roof hole, the smoke of the hearth fire curling around you as you descend the ladder made of lashed saplings. Smoke purifies. The roof hole is an opening as the vagina is a passageway. You emerge and return. The shrine is a square room of whitewashed mud brick walls. On a raised platform heaped high with skins and woven blankets, the old women sit, playing their round flat drums and chanting. Behind them on the wall, a paint and plaster image of the goddess raises her arms and legs and gives birth to 3 sculptured bulls' heads. In the corner stands the birth stool, its high back carved into sacred horns. On the stool squats a sweating woman, breathing hard in heavy labor. Women support her back and grasp her sides. You join them, sponging her face with cool water as the chief midwife rubs her vulva with warm oil. The old women chant, "Great woman, mother of birds, your shrine is sticky with beeswax and feathers. Your shrine is loud with bird cries and throbs with the beat of wings. You are the vessel, beaked and breasted. You contain us as earth contains us, as sky contains stars."
The image of the goddess as the moon mother, as well as the earth mother, is what is the cornerstone of the oldest religion of the world. And the oldest religion of the world is a form of shamanism, pantheism, nature worship, if you will. And in Europe, this custom or this tradition was called Wicca, witchcraft. We think of the goddess a lot as an all-fertile earth mother, but she has many different forms as well. As the Mountain Mother, the all-seeing, all-wise one. They revered her as the Queen of Heaven, the one who invokes the moon, who brings the rains. People would call upon her name, holding the images, looking into her eyes, chanting her name over and over again, until they would go into a light trance. And then they would hear the voice of the goddess speak perhaps to them and gain spiritual guidance and counseling.
When you have a religion which has as one of its center tenets the fact that all creation, all development, and all nourishment springs from a feminine aspect, which we call goddess. It is very easy for the goddess part of it to be a very dominant aspect of it. The purpose of the god is to produce the energies necessary for that goddess aspect to continue producing, continue fertility.
Panwold and Baphomet, carrying on Osiris, gods of the crossroads, crossed fingers, crossed threshold, we cross breathless as climbers, the mountains in us like coral, a history rising up from the dark toward the blue light element we hunger for, toward the air.
Certainly the god plays a large part in our circles and is perhaps in a real practitioner's standpoint equally and even more important for the bringer of ecstasy and the beloved one.
The god was personification of nature spirits and of the earth. In the vegetation greening aspect, and
fertility.
Yeah, fertility, and sensuality and sexuality.
And its mighty rising, and its mighty rising did the shoots and the buds rise up. The king's loins, and its mighty rising did the vines rise up, did the grains rise up, did the desert fill with verdure like a pleasurable garden.
Joy, joyful celebration, and also death and resurrection. The god has always symbolized the death part of the cycle of life, and the goddess is the birth part of that cycle.
I think in general the god is much more problematic for people than the goddess, because so many of us are in reaction to the male gods we've grown up with. But one of the things about the god is that he represents, in a sense, the male aspect of that being that is all life. I often work with the god. It depends what we're doing, who I'm working with, what I want to happen, who I invoke. At one point I had an all-women's coven, and we started really working with the god. And what happened to us was we all took up jogging. And again, the images of the gods themselves are doorways. You know, you work with them, something will happen to you. They are not prescriptions for how men and women should be. You know, they are not, and they're not Jungian, they're not stereotypes. The gods are not active and the goddesses are not passive, you know. Gods are not aggressive while the goddesses are receptive. You know, in our tradition, the gods are very much identified with the earth, just like the goddess. as well as with the sky, and the goddess is also identified with the sky. Every aspect of the goddess is also an aspect of some god, and vice versa, except for perhaps certain things like, the penis and menstruation, which are really sex-specific.
The aspects of God and goddess are dependent upon one another in how they are portrayed and how they are conceived of and perceived of in any one tradition, vary sometimes rather significantly from one tradition to another. I think, however, the prospect of the goddess or the high priestess being the dominant figure, the most important, is fairly traditional amongst Wiccans. Like I said, there are many variances.
The Neolithic was, in many ways, a very golden age for the period of time where people lived in small communities. They worshipped the goddess all together as mother, as daughter.
Unfortunately, things did not remain so nice forever. And what changed, what really happened, was warfare.
This pattern was disrupted quite violently around 4000 BC with the incursion of the Kurgan invasion in successive waves. These people came from the steppes of Russia, and the technological innovations that they brought with them were unlike basketry or pottery or any of the other so-called women's arts that were peaceful art innovations. These people brought the sword and they brought the horse. And they, I guess perhaps they had a bad day at the marketplace and they didn't like what the people were saying or the prices they were getting for the goods, and so they just chopped people's heads off and took what they wanted. And the cultures changed from being sort of freewheeling, easygoing people. They developed fortified towns and villages, and they built great walls. They learned to forge very effective weapons of defense. This is a goddess image from Mycenae. It's also a dagger hilt.
Marduk, in fact, has a spear that is named Security and Obedience. Sort of the original law and order platform in world politics. And he fights a battle with Tiamat, who is the ancient mother of the gods, and her consort. This may reflect a real battle of a shift in power from the north now, which was rising in power, to the southland, which was the old seat of the goddess religion. And Marduk wins, and he carves her up, and he creates the universe out of her dismembered body. So here, instead of the living body of the living being that is the earth, we have the world we live in today, which we see as this dismembered corpse that we're walking around in. And this is a battle story. It's the Babylonian creation myth from Tiamat's point of view. They are coming. Over the farmland kicked and trodden to dust, over the broken dikes and the drained canals, they are coming. From the north in close formation, they are coming. In horse-drawn chariots, sun glinting on bronze spears, they are coming. Armed and shielded, fierce and invincible, they are coming. You stand on a small rise in the ground. You can see them, a line of dust under the shimmering heat waves that rise up from the baked earth. You adjust your leather corselet, grip your bronze spear. Your consort stands at your side. You remember twining together in the passion of serpents, shedding your skin to be renewed. Now he too is armed for war. He says your name, Tiamat. Behind you stretches the army of the south, great in number, shielded in leather, armed with bronze, ready to march in close formation over the wasted land, ready to fight to the end. You look before you, across the plain, they are coming. You look behind you at the formations you lead. You have become the mirror image of your enemies. So much is already lost. They outnumber you. They will defeat you. They will carve their world out of the corpse of these dead lands. You will die. What will be remembered is this battle, your fierceness, your serpent's teeth. What will be forgotten are the tender, iridescent moments of emerging in a new skin. What will be remembered is your mask, your war cry. What will be forgotten is your living face, your own true voice. What you got was organized warfare. And sometimes I think the organization of it was even worse than the violence of it, because it was organized around the principle of obedience to authority. That was what made warfare effective in the ancient world. You had a whole bunch of guys, usually. First you had women involved, but later it became a male preserve. And they all had to march together in formations and stand together or fall together. And what really won or lost battles was not the great deeds of the heroes that they like to sing about, but the obedience of the troops in their ranks to somebody who was telling them what to do. That required retraining men not to feel, not to act on their feelings, not to be in touch with their feelings. And it required retraining women who, as warfare became more and more ingrained, were more and more used as the prizes of war, the motivators to get people to fight. So ancient warfare, rape was not a kind of anomaly. It still isn't in warfare, even though we like to pretend that it is. You know, the rape and the capture of women was one of the main points.
Radiantly do you come forth from within the hearts of men and women to fulfill all of our desires. The enchanted workings of nature are thine, and the dreams of the eons are thine. The far-off hills and mountains, the valleys and the trees, all of these belong to thee.
The purpose of high priest and high priestess in our tradition is to represent the god and the goddess in their more earthly aspects. And this is a very misunderstood thing amongst people who are not within our religion. We do not pretend to be god or goddess. We are god and goddess incarnate up to the point that our religion fills us. And beyond that, we are only mortal. The ability to portray the aspects of our religion in the form of God and Goddess is another way of showing in a very realistic and materialistic form to all of our circle members that energy is produced through a bipolar exchange. And the energy does not exist through one aspect alone, but only through the movement from one aspect to another. My high priestess is very capable of discerning what direction the energies that I can produce should be directed. So I'll leave that job to her. My high priestess is my wife. And the fact that from the moment that we were married, we were also priest and priestess to one another, has pervaded our entire life. I realized my talents and my strong points, and I also realized and recognized my weaknesses. She is very unlike myself. She is a completely opposite type of personality. And people often wonder how we can get along together. We get along together because we recognize that through our differences, we make a more complete whole. And we have a sense of meeting one another, not just as married, but a sense of meeting one another We have always very casually, very easily, very naturally fulfilled one another's empty spots. And this has been an extremely fulfilling relationship. And whether we were witches or not, I believe we would operate in this manner.
When I was a child raised in the Christian church, they said that the name of Jesus was good news. Well, that may be true, and for Christians, I'm certain it is true. For those of us who are not Christians, the name of the goddess is the best news that any of us women ever heard in our whole life. And her name has the power alone to save and to regenerate, to heal, and to renew the bruised and battered and tortured spirits of women, and also of men who have suffered from all of the evil and negativity and anti-natural constraints that have been put on men to don't cry and be like your father and do this and do that and here, take this gun and go out there and kill somebody. And
well, I think it attracts men because it makes sense. You know, I think that men also are susceptible to the understanding that we are all part of a living being that is the earth. I think the craft has a lot to offer men, you know, in the sense that it says, hey, there is no authority in this religion, you have to obey. You know, there is no dogma. You know, this religion is about interconnection, about creating community, and about the kind of ecstasy and excitement and wildness we can generate together in that community. And it's about working to save the earth.
I had a dream in which women were searching for a place to celebrate their spirituality. In the dream, what happened was there was a Dianic circle, a circle of women meeting in a circle of stones by a river, and I came along and they asked me to stay and guard their circle while they went off somewhere. So I said, okay. I didn't really know what that would be, but I agreed to guard their circle. Then these other women came along that were Jews and Christians, and they asked to use the circle. And I didn't know what to say, and I said, well, no, you can't because it's a Dianic circle, but I will go with you and look for a place. And we went all up and down the river, and we looked, and we did not find any place where Jewish women and Christian women could celebrate women's spirituality. There just wasn't any place. So we went back to the Dianic circle, and the women were back, the Wiccan women were back in their circles. And we told them what had happened, how we went on this journey and looked for a place, and there wasn't one. And I said, I guess this means we're supposed to celebrate together. So we did. We got together and we celebrated. And we did a ritual together. That was all of our spirituality. And that was the dream. And out of that dream, I began to see that the dream was true, that there really isn't any place where all of us together of many traditions can celebrate women's spirituality, a place specifically for women. And so that's what I did.
The mainline religions claim that they got started as a result of direct divine revelation. Is there any aspect of revelation in your religion, or is this something that was simply devised and created by people?
Well, you see, we originate from the Ice Age. People had divine revelations even then. We didn't have writing invented yet. We already had the religion going. We already knew, for example, how to create a place like Stonehenge. That takes a lot of know-how. That's a sophisticated culture. So there is like a pre-written culture that we are involved in. When we have revelations, we still get them every day in nature. And the rest of the world has them also in the woods. People don't have divine revelation sitting in pews in buildings. They usually sit under a tree or they listen to a brook. So Mother Nature gives you divine revelations anytime you want to hear it. It's not like comes down to one selected person. It comes down to all of you, and we all hear it, and some of us hear it more than others. And then lately we write it down.
There are many books, there are many pieces of literature, there are many writings, and there are many authors, which we all tend to circulate around and say, here, read this. This appears to be very informative, very good, very helpful. To say there is one revealed word, and that is it, is almost a cardinal sin. We are so individualistic, and we are so cherishing of that individualism, that to make one static work, one written group of words, the be-all, end-all of our religion, it grinds on our nature.
I tell you, we have a commandment. We have a commandment, do as thou wilt and harm none. Now, if you can do that, you're fine. You don't need any more. And that is enough. And then it's up to you how you manage that, you know. It may be different for everyone.
We believe in the living word as it creates reality here and now, and a potential for the future, not as it tells us about our past.
We've been the scapegoats of the various traditional fundamentalist monotheistic religions that have tried to label us as baby burners and, you know, corpse eaters and grave robbers and child molesters and that sort of thing. And nothing could be further from the truth because we are a life-affirming religion that reveres life, and that though everyone may have, like I said earlier, that all religions have the skeletons in their closets, and we all have our maniacs that we are afflicted with, but the overall thrust of the neo-pagan movement has been to reconstruct, to bring into and to midwife into being into the 20th century and the 21st century a religion that reveres nature and life above all things.
I don't think witchcraft attracts unstable people any more than any other form of belief does. Unfortunate facts are there's enough unstable people around to be attracted to just about anything.
Recently, I was at a convention, two conventions in fact, that unanimously passed a resolution condemning abuse in any form. It was a unanimous resolution that was passed that condemned the child abuse, substance abuse, sexual abuse, and any other form of ritual abuse, any form of abuse that leads to the destruction and the harm and the detriment of individuals, of the body, mind, and soul. For we are a religion of healing and of love.
In our tradition, we believe in what we call the threefold law. I don't know if physics would back me up on this, but I do know that it is a good rule of thumb to believe that whatever energies you put out, you can expect back 3 times over. The ethical standards developed by complete responsibility for one's existence and what one exists in makes everybody 100% responsible for whatever goes on. This is a heavy karmic load. And of course, it would be hard to make a person say, all right, there's too many missiles in the world, I'm part of the world, I'm responsible, I'm going to do something about it. And yet, if that is their central focus, fine, go do what you feel is correct. If it is correct enough, the energies of the universe will flow with you. and your energies will be multiplied. Whatever you put out comes back 3 times over.
And the demands that this understanding of the earth makes, maybe they're not the same as the traditional religious demands. It doesn't demand, for example, that we give up sex. You'll be happy to know, some of you. It doesn't demand that you sort of follow a certain set of rules or that you be obedient or quiet, you know. What it demands is that when you understand these interconnections, you are called upon to respond to the world with compassion, with the ability to really feel with other human beings, with nature itself, with the earth itself. And out of that compassion to take action. Because the way that we realize that principle of immanence in the world and in our own lives is by attempting to embody in our lives what we believe, to act on our beliefs, and to live with integrity, which means this consistency inside yourself between thought and belief and action.
I think it's my responsibility what I do with my life, and so it is yours and everyone else's, and I'm content with that. And freedom is very hard. Freedom is much harder than being told what to do. It's much harder.
And it sounds like a licensed anarchy. The problem with such a short statement is it does not include the wisdom behind it. And the wisdom behind it can only be attained by a great deal of internal growth. I have complete freedom to do whatever I want. That's what the statement is saying. If I want to change my universe in any way, I am the person who has the power to do it. I can't go out and say, oh, it's your job. You do it for me. Or, look what you made me do. At the same time, part of the law says, and it harmed none. Now, that includes me. As long as I'm not harming myself, I can have complete freedom to do whatever I want to do, as long as it doesn't harm others. Now, every action that we instigate has effects forever.
You know, in the craft, if you receive a spiritual gift from somebody, you know, if you take part in a ritual and it has meaning for you and it comes out of some tradition, then you owe something to that tradition. And what you owe is some real participation in their real struggles. Otherwise, it becomes a kind of spiritual imperialism.
It doesn't really matter whether or not we were initiated by our grandmother. In fact, many of us, myself included, had to invent an elaborate and fictional mythologies of initiation in order to try to claim legitimacy as witches, because unfortunately Gardner and Leake and the early British witches told us that you had to be hereditary in order to be a witch. And for those of us who knew in our hearts that we were witches, that's what we were, then we felt shut out. We felt like a bastard child at a family reunion. And so we created, invented, or outright lied in order to legitimize our claim to a spiritual tradition that we felt as our own. There are many white people in Native American traditions that feel the same way these days. They have a calling, they feel a deep stirring within themselves that are linked, perhaps through past lives, to Native American traditions. And so they practice that path and they study it and learn it. And there are many Native American people who feel very uneasy and threatened by this because they feel like, God, the whites took everything, now they're taking our religion. I think it's important that people need to sort of drop back and take a deep breath and realize that spirituality is not a patented creation.
But if you do a sweat lodge and then you actually go out and say, hey, what's really going on with these people? What are their real land struggles right now? Can we do something about it?
And when you start doing that, that's when the real power comes to you. That's when your life really changes, because it becomes rooted in something real. The witches do practice magic, which I like to define as being the art of changing consciousness at will. Yeah. It's Dion Fortune's definition.
Magic is a loaded word again. That can be tricks on a stage, making doves fly up from heads, or it could be praying for better weather and getting it, or praying for a new lover and getting it, meeting somebody exciting. Magic is many things. Magic would be just blessing the food you eat and feel that it would make you healthy. So in all of these are magic. Magic is not tricks. It's natural forces acting in your behalf.
Do witches make spells? Yes. Yes. There's several of them in this room. Everybody makes spells. One of the most proficient spell makers is labeled under a street name. I believe it's called Madison. And every one of the good ones are spells. What is a witch's spell? A purposeful understanding of the motivations, intents, and energies involved in the situation, and a purposeful change or filtration of those energies.
Mary Mead. I'm Lady Galadriel, High Priestess and Elder of the Grove of the Unicorn, which is a congregation that practices the religion of Wicca. To us, the elements are not the same as the chemical elements of the periodic table. Rather, they represent or symbolize the 4 different states of being within each of us. There's the physical, which is earth, the emotional, which is water, the mental, which is air, and the spiritual, which is fire. And so these are the qualities or the states of being that we are representing on our altar. This is the way that we can focus and concentrate and get further in touch with each of these aspects within ourselves. In the East, we have earth, which is represented by the salt, plain old ordinary sea salt, actually.
We do something we call casting a circle. We take whatever space we're in, we claim it as our sacred space, and we call in the 4 directions and the 4 elements, which are, in a way, the symbols or the forces of the underlying sustaining powers of the earth. The air, fire, the earth, the water, the things that we really can't live without.
Over here on the east altar, east being the altar of air or inspiration, the incense being its main sign. Here you have the typical witch's altar.
People bring their own lives to the circle. And when they do that, they have something to work on. Somebody's sick, we pray to the goddess of nature to heal that person. Somebody needs a blessing, we do that. But essentially it's to recharge ourselves, to make ourselves stronger, and to reconnect with nature, because we live in cities and it's very hard to remember that we are her children. And in the cities you think you're separate, you are alienated from your environment. And it's reconnecting. It's healthy to be out there in the middle of the night and have a picnic with your friends. It's just a good thing.
The cup is really the main symbol of this altar. This is the west altar. It's the altar of water, emotions. The cup, of course, being the vessel for the water. Here we have some special ritual water, commonly known as homemade wine.
How many of you here had a positive ritual for your first menstruation? It's sad, isn't it, that we have to laugh at it, right? Or how many of you men had a positive ritual when you hit that age? We did a ritual for the daughter of a woman in my coven, where we took her and her mother down to the beach and we tied them together with a silver cord and we had them run. And they ran together as far as the mother could run. And when she couldn't run any further, we cut them apart and let the girl run on alone.
Are these tools ever used to draw blood?
Not on my circle, they are.
On south of the altar, we of course have candles, which represent the element of fire, and also what we call the athame, which is a witch's tool, of course forged in fire, that represents this element. The element of fire is drive, life force, and will.
There's one ritual that we did a couple years back when we were blockading at Livermore, which is where they design and develop nuclear weapons, and we had created a web for this blockade. It was made of all kinds of big strands of yarn, and people had woven into it symbols of life and pictures of their children and yarn and leaves and vines and herbs and flowers. And at a certain point, we took this web and we took it out on the road and we blocked a bus of workers that were going in as a way of enacting what we wanted, which was for the work of creating nuclear weapons to stop. Well, there was this gang of motorcycle police that had been zooming up the road and down the road all day long. And we were standing there with a web, and they looked at it, they stopped. I don't know what went through their minds, but all of a sudden they gunned their motorcycles and zoomed right into the web. Well, this web was made of acrylic yarn. And all of a sudden we had netted 6 motorcycles.
Each person's energy goes out from them and unites with all of the others so that eventually you have a web of energy. And then as you dance, that energy begins to spiral and it raises until it forms a cone shape. When it gets to the point that we're all real high and shouting, and you can just feel the energy vibrating through everything, then it's sent. And we sent it this time for liberation, for freedom, that we might be free to love who we love and celebrate who we are.
Quite a few years ago, when I did not have the experiences that I have now, I tended to let my mouth flap a little bit more about it, much less guarded. I ran into somebody who had decided that I was the Antichrist, or I was working for him. And he proceeded to scream and holler and really carry on. This was in a public park, and to say that I felt slightly endangered by his rantings would be an understatement.
A group of witches have been driven away from a community near Lithonia. They say they will hold no more outdoor services because police cannot guarantee their safety against citizens who don't want them there. And they feel they are the victims of religious intolerance. Tom Sinkovitz reports.
For several months, some 30 witches had been meeting at this altar next to the Arabian Lake. Their services include chanting and singing, and the witchcraft scared the citizens who live nearby. They went to police with stories about the sounds they were hearing.
Singing in unison, then there would be a type of incantation of some kind. And then they would be dancing and singing.
Did you ever hear any screams?
Yes.
Beyond disturbance of the peace, is there any law being violated?
Actually, no, not that I know of at this time.
Leaders of the witches say people have a Hollywood misconception of their beliefs. Today, for instance, they watched news reports showing a man pulling their altar apart just to see what was inside.
I was absolutely horrified. I don't think that they would do that to some other church. That would be totally unheard of. I think people would get very angry and raise a cry throughout the town. But because we are a minority religion, it was apparently okay for this man to do this while other people stood around and watched it. And I call it desecration.
Lady Galadriel says her church might use this episode to take a legal stand. But they won't be meeting here until what they consider a modern-day witch hunt comes to an end. Tom Sinkovitz, 11 Alive News Tonight.
I've been a speaker for 16 years about the same subject. I've been all over the country, and I've never been protested before, and it was very scary for me. It really was.
Do you plan to do anything to attempt to disrupt the activity itself?
Oh, Len, no. We've told all the people this is a peaceful demonstration, and we're not going to fight with sticks and stones. And we just come here. We believe the best picket is our bodies.
My name is Edna Gallion, and I stand for decency, honesty, and integrity.
Well, we're here to show an objection to the use of our tax dollars to support a witchcraft presentation in the public libraries. We just don't believe that's proper for expenditure of our tax dollars.
What causes them to commit rape? What causes them to steal? What causes them to beat up old people and young people and other people?
Is it witchcraft?
Well, that helps, believe you me. It helps.
Why are you coming to this event today?
Well, first of all, I'm interested in seeing Z. Budapest because I've looked at some of her books and she's a very interesting person. Second of all, I wanted to show my support for her because I knew there was going to be a sizable number of people protesting her talk.
Do you practice witchcraft yourself?
Yes.
What I'm trying to accomplish is to show that not everybody considers himself to be on the right wing. Not everybody's a Christian. Not everybody's going to let himself just be isolated and driven into the ground. People have to stand up in America against this kind of intimidation. When you have 500 people carrying signs against one woman, that's intimidation. Everybody should have a right to speak. Christians, Buddhists, Hindus, Jews, communists, Nazis, anybody should have a right to speak in the library or any place in the United States.
But I do believe that it's a precedent-setting situation in our public buildings. This being one of our public buildings in the city, it could very well extend to schools.
There's a fine line between teaching religion and teaching about religion. But, and if the city attorney had ruled that this was a violation, I would have accepted that. But since the city attorney has ruled that this does not violate church-state, I'm happy with that.
I could imagine this happening against the Jews in 1933 in Nazi Germany, where people weren't sophisticated and they were easily led in a closed vacuum where there's not a lot of information and knowledge and mass media and all the things. But this is 1986 in America, 1 week after the Liberty celebration. I mean, this is uncalled for, this kind of demonstration. And here's a lady who's a witch or whatever, which I think is a bunch of nonsense, but she believes in it and she wants to come out here and speak and give a presentation, and thousands of people want to take her right away. That to me is outrageous.
And I believe that what is being taught here today is in direct contradiction to not only the Judeo-Christian ethics that this country was founded upon, but also in direct contradiction to Almighty God and to His Word, and we will stand accountable if we allow this kind of teaching to go on in our society. God, throughout the ages, has held society accountable for what happens within that society, and He is not going to stand idly by and watch people allow this to happen with their own money and with their own knowledge. I'm also opposed to this because I work with young people, and I see the needs of young people daily, and I know what witchcraft teaches, and I know that what it teaches does not meet the needs of the young people. What it does is it leads them down a path to destruction and ultimately against God.
I'm here for two reasons. Number one, it's not a big deal about the tax money. I'm paying a lot of taxes myself. But I'm here because Jesus Christ is the Savior of the world. But I'm here because Jesus Christ deserves the same right today that Satan does. And if we as Christians, blood-bought and born again, have enough courage to stand up, we'll find that we can shut down abortion, we can shut down witchcraft, we can shut down sin, we can take and tear down the idols and the worship of Baal, if we'll only do it in decency and do it in order and let Jesus Christ be the author.
Use me still, Jesus Goddess, to find me a place. Put to shame all those who would destroy my good name. My friends, feel free to applaud because I need some support here.
There were other Christian groups here in my support. There are good Christians who see beyond their noses and they read more books than the Bible.
I feel that you're really struggling for a worthy cause here.
Well, yes, I do. I think nature religions are very good for people. It's a fine religion. It doesn't burden you. It gives you peace of mind, gives you a worldview where you belong. It gives women a lot of integrity. It gives men a lot of respect for women. And it's pro-sex. It's pro-life. It's pro-body. It's pro-earth. It's pro-universe. It's pro-science. It's pro-reading, pro-books, pro-libraries. I mean, that's pretty good religion.
Isis, Star, Kali, Inanna.
The most important goddess of all is one that we have with us here. And her name is Liberty. And without her, there is no religious freedom. Without her, there is no tolerance.
I believe that our spirituality, especially women's spirituality, is the greatest force for change that there is.
The most sustaining and powerful joy of my life is to be able to exchange these ideas, to be able to bring another to the understanding of what I feel is the basic religious nature of life itself.
Goddesses are hard to kill. They tend to regenerate, which is part of what the original power of the goddess is about.
And so the time comes when all the people of the earth can bring their gifts to the fire and look into each other's faces unafraid. This is the story we like to tell ourselves in the night, when the labor is too hard and goes on too long, when the fire seems nothing but dying embers winking out. We say we remember a time when we were free. We say that we are free still and always, and the pain we feel is that of labor, and the cries we hear are those of birth. And so you come to the fire where the old ones sit. You are young, just on the edge of ripening. They are ancient, their faces lined with spider webs of wrinkle, their faces brown, bronze, cream, black. Their eyes are wells of memory. They say, "Listen, child, for this is your night of passage, and it is time to learn your history. Tonight you will run free out into the wild, fearing only the spirit of your own power, and no one in this world would harm you or lay a hand on you." But there was a time when children were not safe, and the dark held rape and death and terror. We remember that time. You are growing. Already you know joy in your own body. Soon you will know joy in another. And whoever you choose to love, we will all be glad for your happiness. But there was a time when people were not free to love and suffered pain and shame and loneliness. We remember that time. Go to the stream, kneel down, drink the sweet water as you can, anywhere water runs in this world, for it runs clean, and breathe the clear air, and know that there was a time when the waters and the very air itself were poison, and the people died. We remember that. Look around the circle, look at our faces, each one different, each special, and we so love the hue of our different skins and the carved planes of our faces, and our beautiful hair like moss, like water. But there was a time when people feared each other and hated what they saw in different eyes. We remember that time. And look up into the sky, see the stars, see the moon. Know that there is nothing in the sky to threaten or harm you. But there was a time when we were all targets, and we didn't know from one day to the next when the bombs might come, whether we would have a world to leave to you. We remember that time. They are silent. They wait. You look into their eyes, you breathe deep, and it's as if you knew the world they speak about. You feel its fear seep into your blood, and you feel also something else, a memory of strength, of courage. Look at the old ones. See the power in those old eyes and frail, cupped hands. Breathe it in. Know it is your own power, too. You are of them. They live in you as you in them, and you marvel at them. How did they survive? How did they stand it? They wait. You realize they are waiting for you, and you wonder what it is they want you to do, and you think maybe they want you to ask them something. So you say, "Tell me, old ones, how did you do it? How did you change it?" And they smile. Listen. Hear what they say to you. We struggled. We held out our hands and touched each other. We remembered to laugh. We went to endless meetings. We said no. We put our bodies on the line. We said yes. We invented. We created. We walked straight through our fears. We formed a circle. We danced. We spoke the truth. We dared to live it.
My dad died this morning, by the way, right up the street, fortunately before KKSN started playing 50s music. And he knew a thing or two about this, and his parents did, so this is going to be an interesting day for me.
Do you think it runs in your family?
Yeah, to a degree. Yeah, I think it's in there.
Huh.
Not much has been done about it. A couple generations got scared about it. But it's there.
Do you think, have you ever met anyone who said they were a witch? Yeah, I have, actually. Did you believe them? Well, yeah, but they weren't, like, serious, like, witch kind that you would think about. Halloween type of witch. What's that? Well, you prove that I know nothing. I'm a creature from another planet. Like, the wicked kind that makes spells and casts spells on people, and she told me that it had to do with the religion of nature and that kind of thing. It's pretty interesting. But I don't know. She was kind of different. Different? Yeah. In what way? Well, they did do like chants and dances and things like that. But I didn't know her very well. I just met her once. She was nice. I mean, perfectly normal person. Do you think there are any real witches? No?
O ancient and mighty ones, lords and guardians of the Watchtower of the North, we thank you for being here with us today, and we also thank all of the guests and friends for being here. Before you go back now into your fair and lovely realms, we bid thee hail and farewell.
Roll up and go straight. We're always looking for the
Music from Elvis Costello right there. Yes. It's Stranger Than Fiction, the Halloween special edition of Stranger Than Fiction. If you have any questions, and you can read my voice, the phone line numbers